The salt wind bit against Captain Sophia Hale's face as she stood at the edge of the USS Valiant's flight deck. The South China Sea stretched endlessly before her, a restless expanse of black water and silver foam. At 0600 hours, the carrier was already alive, a stage of controlled chaos where men and machines danced to the rhythm of war. Flight crews in neon vests darted across the deck, their movements precise, almost ritualistic. Engines roared. Steel wings unfolded, and the guttural growl of F-35s shook the very air. Hale's eyes scanned the organized frenzy with the calm precision of someone who had spent half her life in service. 15 years. 15 years carved from steel and seawater. Every sacrifice bound to this ship, this duty. And yet something was wrong. She felt it in the air, the way conversation seemed to die when she approached, the way junior officers stiffened, then fell into a silence too sharp to be coincidence. For 3 days, whispers had followed her like shadows. She caught them in the corridors, in the mess hall, in the soft echo of laughter cut short the moment she entered a room. She had been through enough deployments to know what rumors felt like. But this wasn't idle gossip. This was coordinated, directed. At her, Sophia's jaw tightened as she stepped toward the bridge. "Captain," a voice interrupted. Lieutenant John Marlowe, her executive officer, appeared at her side. Normally easygoing, Marlowe's face was stiff, his voice clipped. "Admiral Kane has landed on deck. He's requesting your presence in the flag briefing room." Immediately, Sophia froze. "Admiral Kane?" "Yes, ma'am." Marlowe hesitated, then added, "He brought 2 officers from Naval Intelligence." The words were simple, but they hit like a lead weight in her stomach. Naval Intelligence didn't make surprise visits. Not without reason. "Did he give any indication of the meeting?" she asked. "No, Captain." Sophia studied Marlowe for a moment, then gave a sharp nod. "You have the deck." As she turned away, her boots echoing against the steel floor, the corridor seemed to close, and around her, the sterile white lights flickered. The hum of machinery pulsed like a heartbeat, and with every step, memories she had buried clawed their way back. The red glow of an emergency-lit control room, sirens blaring, her hand on the comms panel. Captain Michael Stone's voice steady in the storm. "Do it, Hale. Override the system. Now." 8 years. 8 years of silence since that night at Deepwater Station. 8 years since she and Stone had disobeyed orders. Saved lives, yes, but at a cost no one was ever allowed to acknowledge. They had buried the truth, or so she thought. The Marines standing guard outside the flag briefing room didn't belong there yesterday. Their rifles hung heavy, their eyes fixed ahead, refusing to meet hers. They saluted, opened the door. Admiral Robert Kane stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, staring out the reinforced window at the endless gray sea. 2 intelligence officers sat at the long table, their faces masks of studied neutrality. "Captain Hale," Kane said without turning. His voice was gravel, old and heavy. "Thank you for your promptness." She snapped to attention. "Sir." Finally, Kane faced her. His weathered eyes gave away nothing. No anger, no sympathy, just a detached finality of a man delivering orders. "Captain Hale, you are relieved of duty. Effective immediately." The word struck harder than any blow. For a heartbeat, the room was silent, save for the faint hum of the ship. Sophia forced herself to remain composed, though her chest tightened, her pulse roaring in her ears. "May I ask on what grounds, Admiral?" she said carefully. "You may not." Kane's reply was ice. "You will gather your belongings. You are forbidden from accessing ship systems or speaking to crew regarding this matter. You will be escorted off the ship at once." Sophia's mind raced. Had the files been declassified? Had someone uncovered Deepwater Station? Or was this about something else? Something worse? She gave a crisp nod. "Understood, sir." For the briefest moment, regret flickered across Kane's face. Then it was gone, replaced with the impassive mass of command. "That will be all, Captain." The intelligence officers rose. One motion toward the door. Sophia turned on her heel and left without a word. The walk back to her quarters was a gauntlet. Sailors stopped mid-step. Conversations faltered. Some avoided her gaze. Others watched her with open curiosity, as if they had just witnessed a ghost walking among them. To them, Sophia Hale had been unshakable, a leader carved from iron and storms. And now she was being paraded like a criminal. Her quarters felt suddenly foreign. She packed methodically. Uniforms, a few books, a small wooden box containing letters from her grandfather, himself a veteran of another war. She unclipped her insignia pins, placed them carefully on the desk. Her medals she left behind, all except one, a small, unmarked silver disc, slipped quietly into her pocket. Against regulations, yes, but rules seemed hollow now. A photograph caught her eye, tucked into the mirror's frame, for officers on a submarine deck, grinning in the sea spray. She was there. Stone was there. Voss, Chun, the crew from that mission. Deep water. Her throat tightened. She slid the photo into a worn copy of The Hunt for Red October. A private joke. Dark humor. The escorts waited in silence. She left without looking back. At the gangway, the carrier stretched behind her in orchestrated motion, alive and indifferent. For 8 years, this had been her second life, her redemption after submarines. And now it, too, was gone. A young ensign adjusted the gangway latch as she approached. His lips barely moved as he whispered, "Is it true? What they say about Deepwater Station?" Sophia didn't answer. She didn't even flinch. She just stepped past him as the first drops of rain spattered on the deck, cold and sharp against her skin. By the time she descended into the waiting launch, the drizzle had become a downpour. The intelligence officers watched from above as she disappeared into the storm. Far away, in a secure comms room at the Yokosuka Naval Base, a young technician frowned at her headset. "Sir," she said, her voice tight, "I'm picking up encrypted transmissions. Old Cold War protocols. Coming from an unidentified submarine." Her officer leaned in. "Can you read it?" "Not fully, but I caught words. Dead water. And a name. Stone." The officer's face drained of color. "Log it. Report to Admiral Kane. Directly. No one else." And somewhere in the shadows of a coastal village, Sophia Hale sat in silence above a fish market. A shortwave radio crackled on the table before her. Trench 7 Echo. Confirm receipt. She lifted the mic, her voice steady. Confirmed. Paragon. Valiant mission scrubbed. Moving to contingency. Static. Then silence. Sophia stared out the window, the storm thickening over the sea. 8 years of silence. 8 years of waiting. And now, it was beginning again. Tomorrow, the ocean would reveal its secrets. Tomorrow, the past would surface. Cliffhanger questioned the viewers. If you were in Captain Sophia Hale's place, silence, betrayed, and carrying a truth no one is allowed to speak, would you obey in silence or risk everything to expose what you know? The fishing village smelled of salt, smoke, and the faint sweetness of drying squid. Captain Sophia Hale sat in a dim room above a fish market, her only light a crooked lamp that buzzed against the damp night air. On the table before her, an old shortwave radio hissed and cracked with static, like the sea whispering secrets it wasn't supposed to share. For 8 years, she had lived with silence. A silence heavy as chains. A silence that kept her alive. But tonight, the silence broke. The radio flared to life. Trench 7 Echo confirmed receipt. The voice was distorted, warped through distance and encryption, but unmistakable. She had heard it before. She picked up the mic, steady hands betraying nothing. Confirmed. Paragon. Valiant mission scrubbed. Moving to contingency. A pause. Then, understood. Weather forecast indicates surfacing conditions tomorrow at 0700. Prepare accordingly. And then nothing. Sophia set the mic down slowly. Her reflection in the window stared back at her. Tired eyes. Damp hair plastered her forehead. The storm outside painting streaks of water across the glass. Lightning split the horizon, illuminating the black waves like jagged scars. 8 years since she last heard that name. Paragon. 8 years since she stood in the submarine's control room with Michael Stone. 8 years since Deepwater Station. And now, the ghosts of that mission were rising again. At Naval Command Yokosuka, the situation escalated like a storm gathering momentum. Emergency lights bathed the command center in a crimson glow. Digital screens flickered with sonar sweeps and shifting satellite feeds. Officers huddled in tense clusters, their voices hushed but urgent. "Sir, we've lost contact with the USS Paragon," reported Captain Hernandez, his voice grim. "Last ping placed at 80 nautical miles southeast of the Okinawan Trench. Restricted waters, sir. Deep water testing zone." Admiral Robert Kane stood motionless, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the map as though willing it to change. And Captain Stone? No response. No communication on standard or emergency channels. It's gone completely dark. Kane's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. He couldn't. In the room below, intelligence analyst Emma Vega scrolled through redacted archives, her security clearance elevated for the single purpose. The cursor blinked across page after page of censored black bars, and then her program flagged a match. "Operation Dead Water," she whispered. She opened the file. Most of it was still buried in secrecy, but few lines glared through. Primary officers: Captain Michael Stone, Commander Sophia Hale. Emma's pulse quickened. The dates matched the 8-year gap. And then she saw the personnel transfers. Every single sailor aboard that submarine had been reassigned within 2 months, scattered across commands like seeds in the wind. She leaned back. The realization dawned like cold fire. They broke up the crew, buried them in silence. Whatever happened out there, it was meant to stay buried. Dawn broke pale and gray over the fishing village. The storm had not passed. It had only grown. Wind whipped through narrow streets, carrying the tang of seaweed and diesel fuel. Sophia pulled her canvas jacket tighter, walking with purpose toward the pier. Her boots splashed through puddles, her breath white in the cold morning air. An old fisherman waited for her beside a rocking boat. His weathered face was creased like dried leather, his eyes sharp as broken glass. "Storm coming," he muttered in broken English. "Bad day for sailing." "All the better," Sophia replied, handing him a thick envelope of cash. Fewer eyes on the water. The old man tucked the envelope into his coat, without counting it. "You military?" "Yes, like the others." Sophia froze. "What others?" He spat into the sea. "Americans, last month, came in big ship, went out to deep water, stayed for days, made much noise, fish gone for 2 weeks. Her brow furrowed. "What were they doing?" The fisherman gave a bitter laugh. "They said nothing, but my sonar for fish broken. Too much noise underwater. I know what they do. Same as before." Sophia felt her stomach knot. Same as before. The acoustic weapons testing. The very experiment she and Stone had tried to stop. It was happening again. She turned to him sharply. "We leave. Now." At that same moment, chaos rippled through Naval Command. A communications officer rushed into Admiral Kane's briefing room, her voice breathless. "Sir, the Paragon has surfaced." Kane's head snapped up. "Where?" The officer swallowed hard. "Directly over the Okinawan Trench, middle of the restricted zone." A fresh satellite image appeared on the main screen. There it was, the sleek black silhouette of a Virginia-class submarine, brazenly floating on the surface where no submarine was ever meant to be. And worse, a figure stood atop the conning tower, arms crossed, defiant. "Captain Michael Stone," Kane muttered, his voice low, almost to himself. "He's broadcasting on open channels." The officer added, "But he refuses to speak to anyone except Captain Sophia Hale." A silence fell over the room. Heavy, inescapable. Kane closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of 8 years pressing down on him. When he opened them, his decision was carved in stone. "Clear the room," he ordered. Everyone except Captain Hernandez and Commander Wu. The others filed out, leaving only the Admiral and his 2 most trusted officers. Kane lowered himself heavily into a chair. "What I'm about to tell you is classified above top secret," he said. "If what I suspect is happening, then we are standing on the edge of an international disaster. On the restless sea, Sophia braced herself against the rocking of the fisherman's boat as it pushed into open water. Through binoculars, she spotted it. The Paragon, brazen against the storm, surrounded by destroyers and patrol craft. 8 years of silence. 8 years of secrets. And now the past stood there, breaking the surface of the ocean itself. The fisherman glanced at her nervously. Too dangerous. Navy everywhere. But Sophia didn't move, didn't breathe, because she knew Michael Stone was waiting for her, and the storm had only just begun. Cliffhanger question to viewers. If you discovered your government was secretly testing weapons that could shatter the Earth itself, would you risk mutiny to expose it, even if it meant being branded a traitor? The sea boiled with stormlight. Waves crashed against steel hulls as U.S. Navy destroyers formed a tightening circle around the surface submarine. The Paragon sat there like a shadow risen from the deep, black, silent, defiant. Its conning tower jutted into gray morning air like the spine of some prehistoric beast. Captain Sophia Hale gripped the railing of the small fishing boat as it lurched through the swells. Spray lashed her face, but she didn't blink. Her eyes stayed locked on the submarine. Too close, the fisherman muttered, fear etched across his weathered face. They shoot us. They won't, Sophia said, her voice steady, though her pulse pounded in her throat. A patrol boat roared toward them, slicing through the water, crew armed and tense. A voice thundered over a loudspeaker. Civilian vessel. This is the United States Navy. You are entering a restricted zone. Turn back immediately. Sophia stood tall in the rocking boat, her hair whipped by the wind. She raised her voice, sharp as a blade. This is Captain Sophia Hale, service number 32417. B. Captain Michael Stone is expecting me. The patrol boat fell silent. Crew members exchanged hurried looks, radios crackling with frantic voices. Minutes passed, each one stretched tight as wire. Finally, the reply came. Captain Hale, you are cleared to approach. Stand by for escort. The fisherman's hands trembled as he cut the engine. You crazy woman, he whispered, walking into fire. Sophia didn't answer. She was already climbing onto a patrol boat that drew alongside, her boots landing on Navy steel once more. The young sailors aboard looked at her with a mixture of awe and suspicion, whispering her name like it belonged to a ghost. She ignored them. Her eyes never left the Paragon. The submarine loomed larger as they closed in, rain hammering its slick black surface. And there, atop the conning tower, stood Michael Stone, 8 years older, lines carved deeper around his eyes, shoulders heavier with the weight of silence. But still him, still the man who had once trusted her with everything. Through binoculars, he was already watching her. When a patrol boat pulled alongside, a ladder clattered down the submarine's hull. Sophia climbed, the storm whipping her body, every rung dragging her closer to the past she had buried. At the top, a hand reached for her. Strong, familiar. Stone, his eyes locked with hers as he pulled her up. For a moment, the storm disappeared. You came, he said simply. You called, she replied. No salute, no protocol. Just two ghosts recognizing each other. Inside the Paragon, the control room glowed with low red light. Officers and sailors moved with rigid precision, their eyes sharp, their silence charged. As Sophia stepped inside, the crew rose instinctively to attention. She froze, surprised. Many of these faces she recognized. Old shipmates, survivors of Deepwater Station. At ease, Stone ordered. The sailors returned to their posts, but their gazes lingered on Sophia. Some nodded, some didn't, but all of them knew why she was here. Stone guided her to the tactical display. Sonar sweeps pulsed across the screen, jag patterns that meant more than words. They deployed a grid, he said. His voice was low, controlled, but edged with fury. Acoustic devices seated along the trench, but not for detection. Sophia leaned closer, her breath catching as she studied the resonance waves. The frequencies were unmistakable. Seismic destabilizers, she whispered. Stone nodded grimly. Amplified. If they keep this up, they could collapse the trench wall. Trigger tsunamis across half the Pacific. Hundreds of thousands dead. And the Chinese? She asked. They know. His jaw clenched. They've been monitoring the signals. If the collapse happens, they'll see it as an attack. Retaliation will follow. War, hell, all it takes is one landslide. Sophia's throat tightened. It was worse than before. Far worse. Stone turned to her. We have the evidence. Logs, surveys, acoustic signatures. We're ready to broadcast to every major naval command in the Pacific, including Beijing. Her eyes snapped to his. You're planning to go outside the Chin Command. Stone's gaze didn't waver. We don't have a choice. Sophia looked around the control room. Every crew member was listening. Every face carried the same quiet defiance. Soldiers ready to be branded mutineers for the sake of truth. You understand what this means? She asked, her voice steady but sharp. This isn't disobedience. This is treason in their eyes. Stone's voice dropped to a growl. Treason is letting them bury this again, letting them gamble with millions of lives. The silence in the room was heavy, alive with unspoken fear and conviction. Sophia's hands trembled, but only for a moment. Then she stepped forward. Show me the console. Stone's eyes softened, just for a second. He nodded. She placed her hands on the comm system, looked at the blinking cursor that could change everything. Her voice rang through the room. Let's bring dead water into the light. On the main screen, transmission logs scrolled as encrypted data burst into the ether. Logs, frequencies, seismic predictions, undeniable proof of the testing, of the danger. They sent it all. To Tokyo, to Canberra, to London, to Beijing. There was no going back now. Stone placed a hand on her shoulder, firm, grounding. Whatever happens after this, at least we won't be silent anymore. Outside, thunder cracked across the sea. Navy destroyers tightened their circle around the Paragon, steel predators closing in. The storm darkened the horizon, lightning splitting the sky, nature itself echoing the chaos they had unleashed. Sophia stared through the periscope glass at the storm-tossed waves. Her heart hammered with dread and something else she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The ghost had risen. The past was no longer buried, and the world would never be the same. Cliffhanger question to viewers. If you were standing on that submarine, knowing that the truth you just released could save millions, but also spark war, would you hit send? The storm lashed across the sea as the Paragon broadcasted its secrets to the world. Data packets ripped through encrypted channels, firing across the Pacific like flares in the night. Evidence that had been buried for 8 long years was now in the open, raw, undeniable, damning. Inside the submarine's control room, every eye was fixed on the comms display. The green cursor blinked steadily, signaling transmission complete. Sophia exhaled slowly, her hand still hovering over the console. The silence that followed was suffocating. It's done, Stone said, his voice low but steady. They know. A murmur rippled through the crew. Some looked relieved, others terrified. All of them knew what this meant. They had just committed mutiny. Sophia turned, scanning the faces of sailors. Do you all understand what you've just done? Her voice carried the weight of command, sharp against the tension. This is the end of your careers. Maybe your freedom. Some of you may never see home again. An ensign barely out of his 20s spoke, his voice trembling but firm. Better that than knowing we stayed silent and let millions drown. The others nodded, quiet, resolute. The decision was made. Sophia's throat tightened. These weren't just sailors. They were witnesses. And now, they were conspirators in a truth that could shake nations. Far above, in the Pentagon War Room, chaos reigned. Massive screens displayed seismic charts, sonar maps, and intercepted transmissions from the Paragon. Admirals, generals, and diplomats spoke over one another, the air electric with panic. This can't be verified. A general barked. It already has, countered Dr. Amar Rashid, the lead geophysicist summoned to the crisis table. The acoustic resonance patterns are artificial, designed. These aren't sonar experiments. They're weapons, and if deployed in the wrong location, they could destabilize fault lines and trigger catastrophic tsunamis. Her words hung in the air like a blade. The State Department liaison leaned forward, pale. The Chinese have confirmed identical readings from their own deep-water stations. They are extremely concerned. They see this as a deliberate act, carried out in waters dangerously close to their territory. Around the table, faces hardened. War was no longer unthinkable. It was knocking at the door. At the far end of the room, Admiral Robert Kane stood silent, his weathered face unreadable, but his hands, clasped tightly behind his back, betrayed the storm inside him. He had known, not everything, but enough to fear this moment would come. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs turned on him. Admiral Kane, the president is asking for a full accounting. Did you know about Operation Deadwater? Kane's jaw flexed. He took a breath. Then another. Yes, he said finally, his voice gravel. 3 years ago, I was brought into the circle. I monitored Hale. I monitored Stone. I kept them positioned where they could do the least damage if they ever broke their silence. Gasps rippled through the room. You tried to contain them? The chairman pressed. I tried to protect them, Kane corrected, because I knew when this day came, they might be the only ones willing to act. The room fell silent. The weight of his words pressed on every mind present. Back aboard the Paragon, the storm outside grew worse, thunder shaking the hull. Naval destroyers formed a steel ring, their weapons trained. Sophia stood beside Stone at the tactical station. How long until command responds? Minutes, Stone replied grimly, but not with answers, with orders, and probably torpedoes. A petty officer called out from sonar. Captain, we're being hailed by the USS Roosevelt. Orders from Fleet Command, power down, prepare for boarding. Stone's eyes narrowed. He turned to Sophia. If they board, the evidence disappears. Everything we risk dies in a file marked classified. Sophia clenched her fists. The truth was out there now, but only partially. Governments could still bury it, twist it, erase them. Stone stepped closer, his voice low. We can't let that happen. We have to go further. Broadcast live, wideband, open frequency, to everyone, not just governments, civilians, the world. Sophia stared at him. That's suicide. So is silence. Their eyes locked. A silent war of loyalty versus conscience, command versus truth. Finally, Sophia nodded. Slowly. Do it. Stone turned to the crew. Wideband. All frequencies. Now. The comms officer's hands flew across the controls. The system whined, straining against security protocols. Then, with a high-pitched tone, the speakers came alive. Across the Pacific, radios crackled, civilian ships, fishing trawlers, airliners overhead, even coastal emergency bands. All of them heard the same voice, echoing through static and storm. This is Captain Michael Stone of the USS Paragon, accompanied by Captain Sophia Hale. We are broadcasting evidence of illegal acoustic weapons testing in the Okinawan Trench. These experiments threaten not only regional security, but millions of civilian lives. The truth must be known. To all nations, to all people. For a moment, the entire Pacific held its breath, and then the world erupted. In Beijing, alarms rang through the Navy's command bunker. Officers scrambled as transmissions confirmed American voices naming secret weapons deployed near Chinese waters. In Tokyo, Prime Minister Sato listened grimly as aides rushed him transcripts of the broadcast, his hands trembling around the paper. In Washington, the president demanded answers, fury breaking through diplomatic restraint. And in coastal villages across the Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia, fishermen heard voices carried over their radios, voices speaking of weapons that could shatter the sea itself. The truth had escaped its cage, and now no one could unhear it. Inside the Paragon, the crew sat in taut silence. Their message was out, their fate sealed. Sophia's heart hammered. She looked at Stone, his expression carved from steel. For a brief moment, she saw the young commander she once knew, bold, reckless, unyielding. You've just declared war, she said quietly. No, Stone replied. They already did. We just refused to keep it secret. Suddenly, the deck shuddered. A sonar officer's voice rang out. Captain, Incoming pings. Multiple. They've locked weapons on us. Torpedoes. The storm raged outside. Lightning lit the sea in violent flashes, illuminating destroyers circling closer, weapons armed. The trap closing around them. Sophia gripped the console, her voice rising above the chaos. Hold steady. Whatever happens, the world knows now. The crew braced themselves as alarms wailed. The Paragon had become both witness and target. Cliffhanger questioned the viewers. If exposing the truth meant staring down your own country's guns, would you hold your ground or survive? The tribunal chamber at Naval Station Pearl Harbor was hushed, heavy with expectation. Rows of officers in dress whites filled the gallery, their faces solemn, their eyes locked on the two figures seated in the center, Captain Michael Stone, Captain Sophia Hale. The charges against them were written in stark black letters across the docket. Mutiny. Unauthorized disclosure of classified information. Gross insubordination. The kind of charges that ended careers, or worse. And yet outside the base, crowds gathered with banners and cameras, not in condemnation, but in support. News had broken. The Paragon's broadcast had spread beyond military channels, beyond governments. Civilians had heard it. Scientists had confirmed it. The truth could not be silenced now. The presiding admiral's gavel struck wood. This tribunal is now in session. The JAG prosecutor's voice rang clear, reciting the accusations, each one cutting to the chamber like steel. These are among the most serious violations of naval code, yet we recognize the extraordinary circumstances. This court will hear testimony and weigh the facts. Sophia sat tall, her uniform crisp, her eyes unwavering. She would not bow. Not now. The tribunal president leaned forward. Captain Stone, explain your actions. Stone stood, squaring his shoulders. His voice was steady, the same calm authority he had carried in storm and silence. 8 years ago, during Operation Deadwater, my crew discovered that the technology we were ordered to monitor was not defensive sonar, but seismic weaponry capable of triggering undersea landslides. We reported this. We were ignored. When the trench wall threatened to collapse, I ordered then Commander Hale to override the system. She obeyed. Together, we prevented a catastrophe that could have claimed thousands of lives. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Stone's voice did not falter. For this, we were silenced. Reassigned, our crew scattered, and when the testing resumed, I had no choice but to act. Not for myself, not for Hale, but for every coastal community unknowingly living in the shadow of disaster. The prosecutor raised a hand. And for this you broke your oath. Stone's gaze hardened. No, I fulfilled it. My oath was to protect this nation and humanity from all enemies, foreign and domestic. All eyes turned to Sophia. The tribunal president's voice was quiet, almost gentle. Captain Hale, do you wish to speak? Sophia rose slowly, the weight of 15 years pressing on her shoulders. She reached into her pocket and held up a small, unmarked silver medal, the one she had carried from the Valiant. This was given to me in secret, she said, her voice firm. By Admiral Chun. He told me some acts of service can never be recorded. 8 years ago, I learned that the enemy is not always across the sea. Sometimes it hides in our own blind obedience. She swept the chamber with her gaze. The young officers, the veterans, the tribunal itself. I stand by what I did. Then, and now, silence is not loyalty. It is surrender. The words hung in the air, heavy, irrefutable. 3 weeks later, aboard the USS Roosevelt, sunlight poured across the deck as the Navy's secretary addressed assembled officers and dignitaries. It is the finding of this Navy, he declared, that Captain Michael Stone and Captain Sophia Hale acted with courage and integrity under extraordinary circumstances. Their actions prevented catastrophic loss of life and potential war. The words rolled like thunder across the gathered crowd. The secretary stepped forward, pinning commendations onto their uniforms. By order of the President, both officers are reinstated to full active duty, with all rights and privileges. Furthermore, Captain Sophia Hale is promoted to the rank of Commodore, effective immediately. Applause thundered across the deck. For the first time in 8 years, Sophia felt the silence lift. Not erased, but transformed. After the ceremony, Admiral Kane approached them privately. His face was lined with fatigue, but his voice carried a rare softness. "I owe you both an apology," he said. "I should have done more. Earlier." Stone shook his head. "You did what you could within the system. But sometimes the system is a problem." Kane's eyes narrowed, but then he nodded, "which is why I've been authorized to offer you a new command. A task force dedicated to environmental security, deep-sea monitoring, and transparency. No more secrets. No more dead waters." Stone glanced at Sophia. His smile was faint but real. "On one condition. She's my second in command." Kane allowed himself to ghost a smile. "Already arranged. The Valiant will be your flagship, Commodore Hale." 1 month later, Sophia stood once more on the flight deck of the Valiant. But this time, she wasn't walking in shame under the gaze of silent sailors. This time, they saluted as she passed, respect in every eye. The same path she had once walked in exile was now her path of return. Stone joined her at the rail, the South China Sea stretching endless before them. "Strange to be back," he said quietly. Sophia let the wind wash across her face, the smell of salt and jet fuel filling her lungs. Strange, but right. They stood in silence, watching aircraft launch in perfect choreography. The ocean stretched to the horizon, vast, unknowable, yet no longer silent. Stone finally broke the quiet. Was it worth it? The silence, the risk, everything we lost. Sophia considered the question, her hand brushing the insignia on her uniform. "I think of the villages," she said softly. "The people who never knew how close they came to disaster. The families who never knew they were saved. That makes it worth it." Stone nodded. His expression softened. "And now we do it openly." Sophia smiled faintly. "Funny. Somehow, that feels less satisfying." Later that day, she addressed a group of newly commissioned officers aboard the Valiant. Their faces were eager, nervous, untested. "You've all heard the story," she began, "about dead water, about the Paragon, about choices Captain Stone and I made." She paused, pacing slowly. The sea wind tugged at her words. "The Navy has turned it into a case study in ethics. But what they can't teach you is what it feels like, the moment you must choose between following orders and following your conscience, between protecting the institution or protecting the people the institution exists to serve." The young officers leaned in, the weight of her words pressing on them. "Integrity isn't about being perfect," she continued. "It's about being whole, keeping your actions aligned with your values, even when it costs you, especially when it costs you." Silence followed, the kind of silence that mattered. Sophia turned toward the horizon, the sun dipping low, painting the water in gold. She touched the unmarked medal still hidden in her pocket. Not a symbol of recognition, a symbol of choice. Some truths, like submarines, could only stay submerged for so long. Eventually, they rose, breaking the surface with the force of their own weight. And in that surfacing, justice finally found its level. Final question to viewers. Do you believe loyalty means obeying orders without question? Or does true loyalty mean standing for what's right, even against the institution you serve?